Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other world. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
For of the Most High cometh healing, and he shall receive honor of the King. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio, and I thank all of you for taking the time to join us this evening. I have with me as co-host Laurel Austin. Laurel, are you there, sister?
I'm here. How you doing?
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. And this evening we have a special guest, Liz Bailey. Liz, are you there, sister?
I am here along with Chris as well.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure if Chris was going to join us or not, but I'm glad that you're here with us as well, Chris.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, great.
Thanks for having us on, Zen. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it's a great honor. I just wanted to give you a chance to talk about the CoreHealth products and your line of supplements and also your website, contact information, the different things you do, and then also make mention of the Take on the World conference, which you have coming up quickly as well.
Yeah. Me and Liz are blessed to work for the last 10 years with the nutritionists to the pros. We've supplied products to Major League Baseball, NBA, Olympic athletes for the last 10 years, and that has been such an honor and a joy. But that has cross-ended over to the general public, general everyday person. And we have one simple philosophy, which is nutrient utilization is more important than nutrient consumption. And we've ran for the last 10 years focusing on that premise alone of whole food enzyme-based nutrition to give the body exactly what it needs to operate every single day. And we've been blessed and honored to do that. And, we've been able to work with cancer doctors.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked with some of the fantastic, pediatricians to
natural pharmacists.
Yeah, all sorts of different realms. So that's been absolutely a joy to learn from, grow with, and be a part of that. So we're super excited about continuing that.
Well, can you tell the listening audience a little bit about how it was that you got into that, and also tell people where they can go to find your products?
Sure. Yeah, the website is CoreHealthProducts.com. And, I think Chris and I have just had a passion for health from probably a very early age. We started dating when we were very young, high school sweethearts, and we just had a natural inclining of just wanting to be healthy. And so that took us on lots of different routes, and we ended up creating a great relationship with Shan, the owner of CoreHealth, who has been the nutritionist to professional athletes.
Yeah.
And the relationship has just really blossomed from that.
I would say we really started off with how pretty much everybody starts off. When you look at the health industry, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was all about exercise, high protein consumption, protein bars. This was the new latest rage. Every company was doing that. And that's kind of, how we thought, this is going to be really healthy. And then little do we know, half of the things we were consuming back then were just loaded full of sugar. and trans fat and all of, fake, even sucralose, things of that nature. And so, so many people, when they get into learning about health, they just don't know where to start. And, that drew us. I mean, where we first should have went was obviously from the scriptures, but it drew, being
it was a journey back to scriptures.
Yeah, it was
truly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what's been so exciting. And so, sharing the simple principles of digestion and, what we should eat, what we should not eat. And it takes it all back scripturally, has been truly the joy of, what we've been doing over the last 10 years, which has been a culmination of, almost 2 decades of being together. So
true. Yeah.
Well, since you made mention of scripture, and I wanted to ask you about the dietary laws anyways, in whether you believe that people should try to adhere and follow the advice of the Most High God, even in this day and age where, everybody believes we're under new covenant and that everything as far as the old law has been done away with.
Here's the really funny part. So before I get into that, every single day I get to share with so many different people. And over the last year, thousands of people who call in. If you call into our company, most likely you're going to speak to either me or Liz, because we truly try to handle every single person and try to give them everything that they need. And bringing in somebody just to run customer service doesn't give them that. And so over the last, few years and even every year, I get to speak with them and people ask me, what is the first things that I should get rid of out of my diet? And this is how I always lead. We lead with getting rid of toxic food out of the diet. And then we can go down the list of what those are. We can start off easy with things like refined sugars, and then we can go through, the pesticides on food. But then it ultimately leads us back to the clean and unclean foods of Scripture, right? Because we know that pork, shellfish, these things are extremely toxic. So what I get to share with them is why they're so toxic and show them the 1952 Dr. David Mock study. If you haven't seen that, that is absolutely phenomenal, which goes through the animals in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and test it to Scripture and what you find out in that study is that these animals that are clean are virtually toxic free. Now, we can speak a little bit more on the acidity aspect of even clean animals a little later, but then the unclean animals are virtually full of toxins. When people learn this, and we speak to lots of pastors, wives, deacons, lifelong believers in the Word, and they are under this mindset of new covenant, right. And that old covenant stuff isn't for me. But the minute I lead with these things are toxic and unhealthy, they go, something snaps, and they go, I'm not going to eat that stuff anymore. Now, if I would have led with, God said don't eat this.
Right.
Yahweh, the Most High, said don't eat this. Oh, we've got a fight on our hands.
Right.
But we've been a testament to just sharing that simple premise and then leading up with, oh, and by the way, the Scriptures are 100% right. And don't you think it's so cool that the Scriptures are correct on everything? And they go, that is interesting. So we've had that unique perspective to share clean and unclean from that for a while without making it a very tough subject. And that's how we go into pretty much all the commands of the Most High and how we share those with people and how it doesn't become a fight right off the bat. Because we share it from these perspectives.
And make it relatable.
Yeah, whether it's the feast, and we can talk about that, to Sabbath, to some of these other things that people have a hard time with.
Yeah, we'll definitely go into that a little bit later on in the show. I wanted to cover all the health stuff right up front, though. But with regard to name that particular study again, if you would, Chris.
Yeah, that's a study. It is the study of, I'm going to probably botch this, but if you just look up clean and unclean animals of Deuteronomy and Leviticus by Dr. David Mock, and that's M-A-C-H-T, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but it's a fantastic study and it's peer reviewed by Johns Hopkins University. And so right there, you're going to find he was I believe just Jewish. The man was Jewish, so that's why he wanted to test his own beliefs on why, Yahweh said, don't eat this, but you can eat this. And that's what came out of it. And as a high prestigious doctor at one of the most prestigious university colleges or hospitals, being able to get that peer reviewed by Johns Hopkins University was amazing. And that
was in the 50s.
Yeah,
correct?
1952 is this study.
I don't think you could find that today, seeing how so much.
Oh, it's on the line.
No, I mean, if that was to be peer reviewed today, you look at how all of so much of the studies coming out related to food and pretty much any of the health industry, all the studies are being skewed to fit an agenda.
Right, especially now with keto. And I don't mean to burst a lot of people's bubbles out there, but when we start to look at the keto diet, now we can do adaptations, we can do clean versions, we can do plant-based versions. But when you look at the keto diet from a whole, bacon is one of the number one things that you should be eating on this diet.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, because of the high fat content, and they're telling you and touting as this is healthy. Paleo diets do the same exact thing. And what became such a trend, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but if you go into Whole Foods or you go into any of these health food stores that are out there, when I was a kid, you used to see pork rinds all over the place. And then pork rinds sort of lost their market value. But now we're starting to see them pop up, not just in the 7-Elevens and places like that where they've always been. Now they're making it into the health food store, because it's nitrate free. It's, all these things that
organic.
Yes. Yeah,
exactly. And so now here is,
and it's touted as this is the healthiest snack out there.
Right.
Oh my goodness, that's so
Shake
funny.
my head.
And that's the thing. Here's the big thing that we teach on our show, Biblical Health, and we have 2 years of content on Now You See TV. If anybody's looking to check out any of our past episodes. Here's the big thing that we teach specifically when it comes to his instructions. And we'll talk maybe a little bit more about each individual one later. But when it comes to his law, it's spiritual. And this is the one thing that I wish everybody would take away when it comes to these dietary instructions. We can look at them as a list of do's and don'ts, but he's trying to teach us a bigger picture within that law, whether it's additional foods that are not clean for our bodies, like genetically modified foods, not things like pesticides. We don't view them in the same light that we do this list of do's and don'ts. But if we look at it spiritually, we will see a full picture, and that's what brings us to life. Also, I believe these laws teach us so many things about clean and unclean. What we put into not only our mouth, but what we put into our ears, what we put into what we allow our eyes to see. There's an aspect of clean and unclean, and that's what that spiritual law is teaching us. And so there's so many in the community that follow God's instructions, and they miss the boat. We're searching for gelatin and everything when we're missing. Well, if we would have focused on organics and healthy options, it most likely would have never had gelatin in it, right? Or it wouldn't have had some of these other things. And that's where our mindset should be. It should be focused on the spiritual nature, and the physical always teaches that spiritual, which is just like when Yeshua taught about adultery, just to do this in your mind is the same thing as doing it in the flesh. Right. And that is the whole premise of what we teach on Biblical Health is get back to that spiritual nature of the law. Because I know so many people out there following his instructions and removing toxic food like the pork and the shellfish and all of these things, but it's not curing their issues. They're not achieving health. And that's where if we look at the spiritual nature of the law, they're going to look at their dinner plate and say, does this lead me to life or does this lead me to death? Even if it's clean. And that's what we really want to teach everybody. and we need grace in this area. We need to, and there's things in our life. So we're not perfect. We're preaching to ourselves just as much as, everybody else.
Right. One other question, then we'll go to Laurel. With regard to the clean and unclean animals, it seems like one of the distinctions is that the animals that are selected as unclean seem to be the ones that clean up all of the carrion and the diseased animals. And so the flesh that they are consuming is diseased anyways. And so what they are putting in, for whatever reason, they're able to tolerate this. But certainly, because they are bottom feeders or like pork, it doesn't sweat and holds all of its toxins, things of that nature, that these are the reasons why. And distinction behind what the Father has, permitted and allowed and commanded us with regard to what we should eat and what we shouldn't. And so do you see that with regard to the different classes?
When it comes to the clean and unclean animals in regards to toxins are absolutely running rampant in these, not only in these foods, but when we consume them, they become rampant in us. Yeah. And so things like our mental will become completely off, because these things will create things like brain fog. We won't have that clarity of our mind. I was talking to someone who absolutely is against this whole thing and believes that Peter's vision tells us we can eat anything we want. Right. But then goes on and tells me a story of when they have a friend who was a missionary, and they went to another country, a third world country, and had a piece of pork over in a third world country, and came home with terrible headaches, brain fog, couldn't think right, and then goes and gets a scan done, and there are thousands of worms living in their brain.
Oh, goodness.
And this is something quite common, if you're doing traveling, if you're eating unclean. I mean, across, United States, obviously we think it's absolutely disgusting to eat things like, mice, cat, dog. But you go to other countries and this is a common practice, and we all think that's gross. Yeah, that's I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But when it comes to shrimp, I had to tell so many women recently, because we've been doing a lot of work in Louisiana, and a lot of consultations with a lot of pastors' wives, and they eat a lot of shrimp, and just sharing with them what that black line is on a shrimp. And when they understood for the first time, they've been eating it every day of their life since they were 3 years old, living in Louisiana, where this is, right, shrimp and crawfish city. Mm-hmm. And then when they learn, oh my goodness, this is causing my health issues. I have toxic overload. My liver doesn't work properly.
Mm-hmm. My gut bacteria is completely out of whack, which, we know so many things come back to the gut, which we can touch on in a little bit as well. Yes. But for women, especially when you're eating so much of this toxic food, it perpetuates those toxins in our hormones and just wreaks havoc in that area. And, hormones tie into thyroid and all of that, which is a huge epidemic, especially in women these days.
And there's a lot of people out there that will say, well, if you cook it real well, or if you deep fry it. Okay, here's the catch-22 to that. You know what? There is aspects that you can cook out some of the toxins in these unclean animals, but the methods that you're going to do it is going to make it just as unhealthy, if not worse for you.
True.
So, that's another aspect. So, when you're eating things like, pork chops and you're eating things of this nature, this is where you have to make sure that you cook these things. If you don't cook these things well, it already tells you you're already susceptible to not only, bacterial issues, things of that nature, but definitely worms. That's what, you have to do this? And why would you want to have to take such a precaution when the Father loves us? Yeah. See, these things aren't for our detriment. They're for us to be a vessel for him, because he wants the absolute best for us, because he loves us. And if we just approach it that way as, hey, I'm not smarter than him, so I'm just going to listen to him. And if we can lead with that when it comes to health and just listen and obey, I think if we trust him, believe him with our lives, and we gave up our lives to follow him, and we accept his giving up his life for us and what he did for us and what he did in atonement, then we can surely just say, okay, Father, I can give up the taste of bacon. I can give up the taste of, lobster. I can give up the taste of these things to gain your health, to live long for my family, to be a vessel to reach people with your gospel. This isn't rocket science. If you're out there struggling with this, just listen to him. Don't listen to us. Listen to him. And, if you need a study like that Dr. David Mock study to push you over the top, great. But, there's a calling where he's just saying, hey, guys, I love you. Listen to me.
Right. Laurel?
Yeah, I was just wanting to piggyback off what Zen was saying with the clean and unclean animals. And it occurred to me not long ago that all the unclean animals are all carnivores. And I've been going through a transition, and it's taken me a lot longer to complete it than what I had hoped. But as of April 3rd, I have been vegetarian, and I see that as a bridge to me then eventually becoming vegan also. It's just one of those searching out his perfect will, not only his permissive will. And I wanted to touch on the enzymes thing. I heard you say that you provide enzymes, and I'm only able to find beef or pork enzymes. And I didn't know if you had in your core biblical health enzymes. I'm not even actually sure exactly what they are. So maybe you could also explain that.
Sure. Yeah, the enzymes that we utilize are completely plant-based. So that's what you really want to look for, because you're right. So many products out there today derive their enzymes from, most often what I found is pork. And you'll find that in a lot of the cheap products, because hey, it's prevalent. There's a ton of pork products around us, and that's some extras that we can make more money on.
And just to know how they get those enzymes is that they extract those enzymes from the pancreas of a pig. So let's actually go a little bit further back. So what are enzymes?
Yes.
Enzymes are the catalyst for life. They truly are. By definition, they would be a protein molecule is what they would classify as. But enzymes are the key to everything in life. They are what make raw food raw. They are what make us alive. They are what makes animals alive. They are, without enzymes in our body, we would literally just die instantaneously. Enzymes are that vital to life. Mm-hmm. Just like with raw food, when we cook food at 118 degrees, we kill all the enzymes. It takes that live living fruit or vegetable to dead food. And so how does our bodies digest dead food? Well, we have a pancreas. Just like I mentioned with that pig, we have a pancreas that produces thousands of different types of enzymes. Enzymes to digest protein, enzymes to digest fat, carbohydrates, sugars, dairy. There are enzymes for everything. We need enzymes to sit down, stand up, blink our eye. There's an enzymatic action in the body that's required every movement that we make. So that is how important enzymes are. That's why when you see things that work out there, when people talk about raw juicing or juice fast and diets, that they are all, why they truly work is enzymes are at the root of that. And so when we look at enzyme supplementation, because we should be getting enzymes from our food, but ironically, we're not. We cook our food to death. Mm-hmm. We eat process it. So when you process food, it completely kills the enzymes. So we're left every single day from birth. When we start eating, food at 2 years old, even 1 year old, whenever your child starts to eat food, they're going to start with things like Puffs or Cheerios, well, hopefully organic, and they're going to start with these things that are processed. They're enzyme dead. And I will tell you, the proof is in the blood. What we have done for the last 10 years, our owner has worked with professional athletes to address oxygen and nutrient utilization in their body, and we can do that through the blood. It is a field of medicine known as dark field microscopy, and it's really it's not a diagnostic tool. It's a tool that will.
It's fascinating, truly, because you literally get to see how your blood cells, how oxygenated they are, and how well they're delivering nutrients.
Yeah, and that's the role of the red blood cells. And here's the crazy thing is, well, I said every action in the body requires enzymes. Well, so does that, and a specific enzyme known as protease needs to be in our blood, which is the life of our blood, which is protease. Well, what's the role of protease? To digest protein and separate our blood cells, our white blood cells, our red blood cells. Its job is to separate them, to keep our arteries clear, keep the oxygen pumping throughout the body. That's its primary job. Well, what happens when we eat cooked and processed protein starting from an early age, and we start eating, bacon and eggs and sausage, and let's just say that they were all biblically clean and all turkey or all chicken. Then we go and eat a turkey sandwich. Then we have a high protein bar snack or protein shake midday. And then dinner comes and we have a burger and we have a steak, or we have chicken breast or something of that nature, all high protein, all cooked and processed. Well, number one killer in this country is heart disease. Well, let's go back to what I said about the blood. When the blood starts to get robbed, those enzymes. So now let's take it back to the pancreas. Well, the pancreas, when you're young, is going to pump out those proteolytic enzymes, those protein enzymes, to digest all of that protein that you just consumed. Now, we're not even talking about fats, carbohydrates. We're not even talking about that yet. Same applies. So every time we eat that cooked and processed protein, we start to have to rob from our pancreas. Our pancreas says, there's no enzymes in this food, because when we eat like an apple, for example, you eat that apple, it sits there in the upper portion of your stomach, and a little hydrochloric acid is produced. That's normal. That's natural. You need that to occur. Its primary job is to warm the enzymes in your food, to activate them. That's what hydrochloric acid in the small amount is designed to do. In an apple, banana, it can do that. Well, in a cooked piece of meat or a processed piece of meat like lunch meat or bacon, clean bacon, it sits there and goes, I can't do anything with this until I bring up enzymes from my pancreas. If you do that too many times, over time, and we know that as metabolism slowing down. When you hit the age of 25, 30, and you start to gain weight, you eat the same things you ate your whole entire life, then all of a sudden you start to gain weight. Well, what's going on? Your pancreas isn't producing those enzymes to digest this food. Well, as that process begins to happen, well, here's the next step. Where's it going to get that protein enzyme after the pancreas? Well, it's going to start robbing it from the blood. When it starts robbing it from the blood, and here's the crazy part, when we do dark field microscopy on every single professional athlete who lifts weights, who runs, and they can run marathons, whether they're soccer players, baseball players, football players who lift heavy amounts of weight, and they're in tip-top shape. They look perfect on the outside. Their blood cells are all tightly clumped together. 98% of everybody that we test, their blood cells are all clumped together. 20 years ago, when our owner of our company would test children, he would be hard pressed to find a child under the age of 8 that would not have fully separated blood cells. It was very common for children just to be full of enzymes. Nowadays, every child that he tests, it's the same as the adults. And now it's like we don't find that same thing that we found 20, 25 years ago in what were 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. Now we're starting to see that in 3 and 4-year-olds, and the gap is getting smaller. One of our largest clienteles is infants coming out of the womb suffering with things like infant reflux, enzyme probiotic deficiency. So when we don't digest our food and we're eating cooked and processed food and we're robbing from our pancreas, it's going to cause what I call the triple effect. And if you're out there listening, dealing with things like acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion, colitis, yeast infections, you name it, anything that deals with the gut being off, it ends up starting with an enzyme deficiency from the amount of cooked and processed foods that we consume, which leads to over acidity in the system, which then starts to kill off our probiotics and causing a probiotic deficiency. And then over time, we end up with, because we're secreting more hydrochloric acid to move things through the system, we end up with a hydrochloric acid deficiency. Now we can't even digest raw food. And if you're out there, some people we talk to every day, they call in and say, I eat a raw salad and it runs right through me. It looks the same way that I ate it is the same way as I digested it. And that shows a hydrochloric deficiency, which stemmed from the lack of whole, live, living foods as our prominent base in our diet. And that takes us right back to Genesis 1:29.
Wow. That is amazing. And then with the acidity, that's what sets up cancer in the body. And it kind of consuming itself. Is that correct?
100%, absolutely, because you have that continual imbalance occurring. And I think a lot of us know that we live our days with cancer cells inside of us, but it's up to our immune system, which 80% of the immune system is found in the gut. So it's up to our gut and our immune system to see those cancer cells and, send those attackers and create that apoptosis, that's, cellular death of those cancer cells that can mutate very quickly. Now, if we have a continual imbalance of our gut health, weakening our immune system, and we have continual acidity brought about by acidic beverages, acidic foods, the inability to digest properly, which raises and causes a pH imbalance. We're not talking about the blood. We're talking specifically about the tissues in the body. That's going to create the perfect environment for cancer to mutate, where it's a lack of oxygen, it's an anaerobic environment, and you have a higher amount of acidity. Those two things combined, the lack of oxygen and the acidic nature, is what Dr. Otto Warburg found and won the Nobel Peace Prize for in 1931 for the root causes of cancer. No oxygen, high acid.
And if we take it right back to the blood, what we talked about with dark field microscopy, here's the thing. We can take someone's blood and give them some plant-based enzymes and test their blood 5 minutes later, and what you will find out in every single case is that we will fully separate all the blood cells again. Now, that's only a snapshot in time, because if they go out and eat a burger, it's going to go right back together.
Right.
So here's the thing. What are we saying? What is the best thing? What can we do every single day? Well, the biggest thing is that we teach is enzymes are the key to life. So we want to eat as much raw food as in our diets as possible. So are we saying eat only raw food? There are people out there that get fantastic results doing that.
If you can.
If you can, go for it. Because that's what they would have done in the garden. Now, right. Is that feasible in today's age? Probably most likely not for 99.999% of us. So what are we saying? Eat as much as you can. Eat those fruits. Eat those vegetables raw. Make your snacks as much of those things as possible. Add those to each diet. Eat things that are raw, like things like raw fermented sauerkrauts, things of that nature for your not only enzymes but probiotics. But what can we do when we eat, something that is cooked? Maybe we have, baked potato, a steamed vegetables, and a grilled chicken breast. That may be someone's dinner, or someone like Laurel or someone like us who eat, plant-based. We might have, a veggie burger, or we made a bean burger, or something like that. Well, those are all cooked foods. Well, we can take those same plant-based enzymes in a supplemental form and get those similar results of eating that. Now, here's the big problem. Not only with, things like bovine or cow enzymes, those things that you see on the market, which are out there. They're going to be known as ox bile. They're going to be known as pancreatin. And they actually go into the pancreas of these animals, these dead animals, and extract those enzymes. Here's the problem with it. Not only are these things unclean for us and probably have toxins, they're just not healthy to be in our body just by, his measure. But here's what it does, and I believe this is part of why, you don't even want to use any part of a dead animal, for consumption, is that when you consume animal-based enzymes, they trick your pancreas into thinking that it's producing its own enzymes again, and it stops its own function. Oh, wow. And you become dependent upon this supplement for the rest of your life. I know people who have been taking these specific animal-based enzymes for 10 years. They can't get off of them now. And that's a major problem because their pancreas is starting to shut down. And when the pancreas starts to shut down, well, what's on the rise? Well, cancer in the pancreas, pancreatic exhaustion is now a medical term. But here's the flip side. Plant-based enzymes, fruits, vegetables, plant enzymes in supplemental forms. They support pancreatic production, and actually you begin to increase your own body's enzymes again. Here's the thing. If you're out there wanting to lose weight, feel better, have more energy, get more oxygen in the body, number one thing you could do is improve your enzymes. Mm-hmm. As metabolism goes down, enzymes are equally going down at the same rate. When metabolism raises, it's due to enzyme count raising. So if you're out there in the gym and you're working out and running on the treadmill, doing all these things, but you're not getting the results, get those enzymes into the body and watch the results happen, because you will feel like you're a kid again, like you're, when we were 8 years old and you ran around and you had energy all day long. And we as older go, how do they have all this energy? And it's these enzymes, and, they junk, and their bodies run on junk, half of the time. I grew up on junk. We all did, right? Yeah. And, now if we eat that junk, well, 2 days later we've gained 3 pounds and we feel miserable, and we're going to the bathroom more often and not a good way, or we're not going to the bathroom in not a good way.
And I think that's why so many people who do the, 3-day, 5-day, 7-day juice cleanses or juice fast, when you're getting a flood of enzymes that literally when you juice, you basically bypass digestion and it's like liquid energy, but that energy is those enzymes, that life force of that fruit or vegetable that you juiced. Your skin glows. You have, such a high amount of energy because it's literally pure enzymes coming from, all of the natural foods that were here for us to eat.
That is awesome. And this is something I most certainly didn't know. And so with regard to the enzymes as well, are you saying that it will also speed up your metabolism?
Absolutely. Yep. That is the one thing that enzymes regulate metabolism. Mm-hmm. If that's one thing that you could learn, that the listeners can learn.
And we're speaking, just to clarify, we're speaking about one aspect of enzymes, specifically digestive portion of enzymes, because the enzymes that allow your heart to beat, are different than your digestive enzymes.
Yeah. And the enzymes that are in your eyes, ironically, when our eyes start to weaken as we age, well, it's an enzyme issue in the eye. It's a very specific one. It's actually an antioxidant enzyme known as superoxide dismutase. Mm-hmm. And that one we can get. We can't take it supplementally. We can actually take it through by the foods that we consume that will naturally produce it. So there are foods that we can eat.
Give you like the building blocks.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we do supply SOD building blocks in some of our products to help produce that. And there's a lot of companies that have figured that out because they knew that companies in Japan would sell superoxide dismutase as an enzyme in a pill form, but the molecular weight of it, the body couldn't absorb it. And it was $120 a bottle when it first came out. And they made millions and millions of dollars, but nobody could get anything out of it. But if you just ate more fruits and vegetables, you mm-hmm. start to see your body starts to naturally produce it just by feeding it the right things.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing. And with regard to, and what is the name of the product at CoreHealth with regard to the plant-based enzymes?
Yeah, our number one product, everything that we talk about, that one is the digestive health. That is, not just to sell our product. When you're looking at, you're going to the health food store, you're going anywhere to look for an enzyme, a probiotic, we believe that enzymes and probiotics can and should be taken together if they can work synergistically together, because there's a lot of probiotics and enzymes in supplemental forms that can't, due to that they're heat stable and they can't work together. But there are ways and products out there, just like nature, how they work synergistically, just like sauerkraut's full of enzymes and probiotics. The fermented foods are full of both of those. So taking that same principle, there are products out there that use that. So we always tell people to look for a very broad spectrum-based enzyme. There's a lot of companies that just sell what is called the Fab 5 enzymes, which would be protease, lipase, cellulase, and so on, amylase. Mm-hmm. Those are the main four. Those are in lipase enzymes, right? And so this is going to be kind of your standard when you're looking at enzymes, and those are pretty relatively inexpensive. Not as inexpensive as animal enzymes, but they're missing so many of the factors and the cofactors. So you want to look for a product that includes every part. For protein digestion, and I'll just, I don't want to get too technical, but you want to look for a product that contains a blend of proteolytic enzymes, specifically protease. Protease 4.5 is what it's known as, and that's an acidic range, and protease 6.0, which is also an acidic range. That will address your primary first stages of protein digestion. Well, there's a second stage of protein digestion, that doesn't require protease. That one requires peptidase. So if your product doesn't contain peptidase enzymes and it only contains protease, which is great, it just can't get it to that second level. So your body is now responsible to supply the rest of that protease or that peptidase, and we see that as counterproductive. Also, when it comes to things like very specific minerals, lipase enzymes that digest fat. So if you're out there looking to lose weight and digest fat when you eat your meals, if you're consuming a lipase enzyme that you may hear us talk about, but if that lipase enzyme doesn't contain whole food calcium in your product like it would find in nature when all raw lipase is found, that is the unlocking potential of that lipase enzyme. So just like nature, when we formulate a product, it's based on the laws of nature, how things work synergistically together in the body so that your body can utilize it. Our tagline, like I said in the beginning, which was nutrient utilization is more important than nutrient consumption. We would rather give you everything that you need and have you utilize it rather than give you a bunch of things you don't need and you can't use. Right. So that is our principle, and I think that whole aspect, we could take it scripturally, we could take it pretty much everything, when it comes to utilization over consumption.
Okay, and so with regard to your product line, is there something that contains that probiotic nutrient supplement that you're talking about here and using it synergistically here with the digestive health?
Yes, and that product is named Digestive Health. It's really a 3-in-1 with containing the broad spectrum enzymes, like Chris mentioned, as well as a multi-strain probiotic that is pH specific, so it can withstand the acidity of the stomach, and reach the lower GI, so the whole entire pH range along the GI tract, and then digestive herbs and prebiotics that help to colonize and grow the good bacteria so that you can create that balance back again. So Digestive Health is our most popular product. We also include that in our CoreHealth pack, which that contains the SOD that Chris mentioned, the superoxide dismutase, along with whole food, fruits, vegetables, antioxidants. That one has a lot packed into it, where for somebody who may be taking, all these onesie little products of vitamin B and vitamin D and, a cupboard full, this one product can reduce down what you take into something that is formulated to work synergistically together, give you exactly what your body needs, and you don't have any preservatives or fillers or binders or anything like that. It's made so that your body will be able to recognize and digest.
I have one thing, a free tip. What you can do right now, if you're out there listening and eating, and I'm speaking to myself again, every time we speak, we have to take the things that we know and actually continually apply them. But here's a free enzyme tip. Something you can do for absolutely free. And here's the problem. Over the past few years, the last 20 years, we've seen the introduction of the Atkins diet, and now we're seeing the resurgence of the Atkins diet with the ketogenic diet. And it's all based on the premise of reducing or completely eliminating carbohydrates.
Right.
And so here's the crux of that. Our bodies are designed to run on carbs. But here's the problem. None of us digest carbs really well. And why is that? Well, here's the free tip. And again, I'm speaking to myself. Guys, we need to listen. Because we're probably victims of this much more than women are.
The shovelers.
Yeah, so we eat way too fast. The enzyme that is required for carbohydrate digestion is an enzyme called amylase. And that primary enzyme is not produced very much in our pancreas. It's produced in our saliva. So when we consume our food, chewing properly, breaking down our carbohydrates is extremely vital to breaking it down to the very lowest level. And so I'm going to make a really bold statement. If you're now hearing about enzymes for the first time in your life, I'm going to tell you something about macronutrients that we've been lied to. Our bodies do not use protein. Our bodies do not use carbohydrates. And our bodies do not use fats. And people will say, you are absolutely crazy. It only uses the broken down forms of those, which in the case of protein is amino acids. In the case of carbohydrates is simple sugars. And in the case of fats is fatty acids. The only way to properly get those down to that micronutrient level where the body recognizes which the body can use for fuel, which the body can use for muscle growth if you're out there, lifting weights, or can use it for energy like simple sugar, or can use it for mental, healthy hair, nails, in regards of the fats. The only way to do that is through enzymatic activity. There is no other way the body can get those to those simple forms but through enzymes. That is absolutely key, and actually something when I first heard that, we all focus on our macronutrients. When you get into health, when you get into this, you're focused on, well, how much protein's in it, how much carbs in there, how much is this? It's not about that. It's what you can utilize and what we can break down to that cellular level so that our bodies can properly use it.
So you're saying we should actually taste our food.
Taste our food. And that's a free tip. So when we eat.
And I'll add to that.
Yeah.
How about this? You take your bite, and while you're chewing it those 32 times, set your fork down on your plate. And that just simple, reminder to set your fork down helps you to slow down and, really enjoy your meal, and you'll ultimately eat less. It gives you that little bit of that rest and digest, which is what we want to do when we're eating. We don't want to eat in haste, never eat standing, never eat when you're angry. We need to take stressed, yes. Take that time to sit, relax, and that way you'll get your best digestion. You won't feel as bloated. You'll get that sense of, hey, I'm full a lot faster than what you would think.
Hey,
right.
Chris and Liz, I was told a long time ago that it takes about 20 minutes for your stomach to let your brain know that you're full.
Mm-hmm.
If you eat slower, you'll naturally eat less while your stomach is sending that signal to your brain.
Exactly. And that's the reason to set down your fork. You can be present with your food.
All right, hold on, everyone. We are at break. So we'll be right back, everyone, for second hour.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I hope that you are not hearing the static that we are, but for whatever reason, the commercials, we're not able to hear them in the background. So anyways, I'm your guest, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. I have as co-host with me this evening, Laurel Austin, and we are honored to have a special guest, both Chris and Liz Bailey. Are y'all there again?
We are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, much better. Glad that it cleared up. All right. Well, welcome back, and did want to give you a chance, Liz, to go into, we had spoke about previous, about something that you've been looking into with regard to gut health and some of the documentaries or other things that you've learned. And also you had made mention of the particular video on the root canals, and I thought that was of interest as well. So could you just speak about that?
Sure, absolutely. I'll speak about the root canals briefly first. It's an area that has always intrigued me because I have had a root canal. I had it done when I was about 14 years old, and teeth has never been a strong suit for me, unfortunately. And so I've always had a lot of issues. And, just thought root canal is the way to go. That's what the dentist says to do. And as I started to understand health, getting older, one of the doctors that I started to follow, Dr. Mercola, which I'm sure a lot of listeners are very familiar with. He has one of the top-rated health sites out there, and he was speaking on how root canals can be connected to breast cancer, especially in women, and had lots of other different supporting doctors on doing interviews, and that just, threw me into that tailspin of research. And oddly enough, Netflix came out with a documentary, a very short-lived documentary on Netflix called Root Cause. It was phenomenal because it went through how this man had all these different health ailments and could never really pinpoint anything until he finally discovered it was his root canal that had caused it all. Now, this, of course, ignited the dental industry because root canals are a very profitable part of their business. Now, let me ask you, in any part of medicine where if you have a dying piece of tissue or whatnot in your body, when in any part of medicine would they seal that bad boy up and let it sit in your body? You don't.
Absolutely not.
Only in root canals. Only in your teeth, which are directly connected to so many different nerve endings and right next to the blood-brain barrier of your brain. And so once I really started to understand all of this, then I went on a pursuit to find a holistic biological dentist in my area. And it took a long time. There's very, very few out there, and you really have to do your research to find the best one that understands it, because if you just go to your regular dentist and say, hey, I want my root canal out, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. This is something that they've been so indoctrinated with, very similar to chemo and radiation in the oncology ward. So do your research if you have a root canal. Understand that in women, this is just wild. But I think one of the studies that was done, out of all the women who had breast cancer, it ended up being like around 95% of them or so had cancer on the side of their root canal.
Wow.
And it's very much tied to it. So when I did find a biological dentist and we did the different scans, we could actually see, now I wasn't having issues. I know a lot of people maybe do have a lot of different issues, jaw pain, maybe they have an abscess. It could even tie into autoimmune disorders. Truly, a lot of things can be traced back to a root canal, but I wasn't really seeing any signs. I was just more researching and knowing I want this out of my body. Mm-hmm. And
before it causes problems.
Yeah. When we did the scan, we found that lying underneath my molar. It was where I had my root canal, which you could see, the canals were completely filled in. And when that procedure is done, every dentist does it to their best ability, but it is not completely sterile. There's no way to make it completely bacteria free. There's just not. So once they fill in those, the root part of your tooth, there will always be bacteria, sort of stealth bacteria, in an aerobic environment, just like what we talked about previously with cancer. Cancer thrives in a low oxygen anaerobic environment. So do certain bacteria, and our mouth is full of bacteria. So they remain there stealth-like. And that's what we found on my scan. We found a pocket of bacteria underneath my tooth. And the dentist said, it's like, look, you're young, you're healthy. This wouldn't cause a problem for you today. But if you were to have any health challenges, that's when this is going to cause, something down the road, whether it starts with autoimmune. It could be simply as potentially Hashimoto's, causing a thyroid problem, and going, completely further, because it's just continual bacteria thriving in that low oxygen environment, and given the opportunity can just explode into who knows what. So I had it removed. And I was very, very nervous about the procedure because I've never had anything like that done. I did have my wisdom teeth pulled a long time ago, but I was completely put out for that. And this I chose not to. And when the procedure, everything was taken out, I opted to have what they offered is to actually spin your own blood and create a plasma. It almost looked like a piece of skin, essentially, what it ended up being, that they put into the opening of where my tooth was taken out, and that sped up the healing immensely. It was within basically 3 days, and I had zero pain. It was phenomenal. So as of right now, it's completely healed, sealed, no cavitations, no nothing occurred from it. And looking at further options of potentially putting in a zirconia implant, one that is completely safe. It does not give off any, harmful metals or anything like that. It's a ceramic implant. So that's a potential. I sort of like, just having the tooth gone and not having anything in its place. Honestly, you don't see it. But, so anybody who has a root canal, I would tell you to really, really dig into the research, because boy, it can cause a lot of health issues, along with any mercury amalgams that you may have in your mouth as well. But so much of it can, tie back into that gut health, which is a fascinating area of research. It's a whole nother rabbit hole somebody can jump down into, because so much is connected to it. And that's what I have found as I keep digging deeper and deeper into understanding gut health. Working at CoreHealth Products, gut imbalances is one of our focuses, and so that's what really got me fascinated with it. But when you can see how really all disease begins in the gut and comes back to a gut imbalance, but it's so much more than what we typically think of. It's not just the typical stomach issues that signals that something's wrong in the gut. It can be so much more, and connected to not just the GI tract, but you have the whole gut-brain connection, which leads into the gut hormone connection, the gut thyroid connection, and even now they're seeing a gut Alzheimer's connection. So much comes back to whether your gut is in balance or if it's out of balance. And Yeah, it's really interesting because, it's not just heartburn anymore. Physical symptoms could even be just, say you have a stiff neck or you have continuous headaches. You have a hard time falling asleep and staying asleep, getting the really good, deep REM sleep. Maybe you're someone who has always been a procrastinator, or you grind your teeth, especially at nighttime. Or you even have a hard time focusing. You can't complete tasks all the way through. And even in children, you can look at the emotional signals of somebody who can cry very, very easily. You become overwhelmed with a sense of pressure. You can't relax. Or maybe you're quick-tempered and you just can't concentrate or decide on, where to eat. I think everybody's always indecisive, but, that can always be a little red flag saying, hey, something may be out of balance. It's fascinating because we always think, well, our brain tells our whole body what to do. But when it comes to the whole gut-brain connection, it's really the gut sending more signals to the brain. And it does that by its primary messenger.
The one thing that I want to say is when we think about the gut-brain connection, so if you're out there thinking, how does that even work? I'm going to lay it out very simply. We all know this because we've all experienced it, whether it was, the butterflies from first day school, or when you weren't prepared for school and you had a big test, or you played sports and before the game you were in the bathroom, going to the bathroom more than you should, and you had the nervous flutters, or your wedding day and people say cold feet, or right. We all know these things, even down to a point to where if you just think about those memories, they could even bring up that feeling of nausea, right?
Sensation all over again.
So just thinking it affects that gut, and it works. And it not only works that way, but it works vice versa back the other way. So we've all experienced this gut-brain connection, but now we're starting to see how vital it is for the health.
Okay, and so if you have somebody that has a number of these root canals, what do you suggest? What do you recommend that they do first, besides watching the documentary? And the name of it again was?
The name of it is Root Cause, and I believe you can find it if it's still on Amazon, because Netflix completely took it off with all the backlash they got from the dental industry.
Okay, so Prime. All right. And so if an individual has a number of these and may, even if they don't have health issues right now, but, maybe there are some causes to it that they don't even recognize. But so what would you recommend that they do? First, find a biological dentist. Is that what you said? Or
yes, I would research to find a biological, holistic as you can find dentist near you. And what somebody could do today, one of the easiest things, to at least start in your mouth first. I have a water pick, and I use I got it from the same dentist, but it's a concentration made of different essential oils, different herbs, and I pour a little bit of this concentrate into the water pick reservoir and use that on a daily basis. That really helps to get into where you can't brush, around, all around your teeth, helps to really fight all the different harmful bacteria that's in our mouth. There's a lot in there. So that I would do number one. Number two, you can even try oil pulling. And that's where you take either like a teaspoon of coconut oil. It's really, I think it started off initially with sesame seed oil, but coconut oil always seems to, everybody has that. First thing in the morning. And, or say you are hopping in the shower, put that in your mouth. It's sort of gross, but you swish it around a lot all over your teeth. You do that for about 10 minutes. And when you're done, it's easy to do in the shower. And when you're done, don't spit it in the sink, spit it in the trash can or in the toilet, and then brush your teeth. The oil pulling really helps to, again, pull that bacteria out from around the teeth. And coconut oil is very antibacterial. So that's something that, you can do today for, your mouth has its own microbiome, just like your gut.
Right.
And you don't really want those bacteria that's living in your mouth biome to reach the gut. So much of what, studies can show is if you have a lot of harmful pathogens in your mouth, it affects your heart. So, the mouth is something that I think a lot of us just disregard. Hey, I brush my teeth, I floss every now and then. But it's truly important to the overall health of the body.
Right.
If you have a lot of inflammation going on in your mouth, you most definitely know that there's inflammation systemically throughout the whole body. So it's a good indicator of health.
And what I would say would be another thing that we could do daily is detox daily. And not only, we could do a heavy metal detox even now, but definitely when you get them removed, you'll want to do a heavy metal detox as well. That would be important because of the mercury. But then just daily detoxifying, alkalizing, enzymes, those things are daily alkalizers. So we don't need to go on huge cleanses if we're daily eating fruits and vegetables, things that are naturally detoxifying to the body, juicing. And
your greens,
yes.
Your green superfoods and your green herbs, those are amazing chelators of metals, providing all the proper minerals that your whole body needs to sort of calm down the inflammation that can occur.
Excellent. Well, my goodness, this show is going by so fast. Laura, I want to give you a chance to comment here, and then there's a couple questions I want to ask, and then we'll speak about the conference.
I've had a lot of luck with oil pulling. I've even noticed that it can heal a tooth if you've got a cavity started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I give coconut oil to my son who is severely autistic, and it also amazingly has a very calming effect. Like if he's agitated and he'll just take a few spoonfuls of coconut oil by mouth, within just a few minutes, he's much calmer and happy. I'm not sure what it's exactly doing, but I know it's very nutritious and very good for him, very detoxifying. So we've used it for 10 years now in this manner.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent.
It's all of those anti-inflammatory properties. Absolutely.
Yeah, I hear that it's better to use coconut oil than things like even olive, and especially canola, that's really a bad oil. Is that correct?
Yeah, so much of the canola, which comes, that rapeseed oil, it's genetically modified. So if you can transition to your cooking oils of what you saute with to be the coconut oil, it can withstand the heat of sauteing.
Avocado oil.
Yep, it doesn't oxidize. So in that oxidation process creates more free radical damage throughout your body. So,
yeah. And if you use olive oil, it shouldn't be for cooking. Use that in dressings, mix that with make a vinaigrette with some apple cider vinegar, those types of things.
Yeah, keep that cold.
And make sure that it's, a cold press organic version, that hasn't been processed to death. So.
Yeah, doesn't olive oil become rancid after like 175 degrees or something like that?
True. And really, there's so many fake oils out there that you really do have to be careful in grocery stores today. You really have to know and read your labels, know where it's coming from, and look for those cold pressed words on the oil specifically.
So grapeseed is bad.
Oh no, I said rape. RAPE, rapeseed is the actual term for canola oil. Grapeseed, however, is good.
Okay. Just making sure, because we use coconut, avocado oil. We use avocado oil a lot. Olive oil, like as a dressing, and then sometimes for the cooking, I switched the family to the grapeseed instead of like you don't want to use like Crisco or safflower. That is the bad stuff, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, the grapeseed is a nice neutral oil, sort of flavorless. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and your Crisco is most likely going to contain lard. So,
Could. Yeah.
Now, what do you think of MCT oil in comparison to the coconut oil to take just internally?
So the only thing that I would caution somebody in doing higher amounts of the MCT or even just, the coconut oil from the tub, I think there's definitely instances where it's extremely beneficial, like for your son and for children. We do that with our son who's going to be 7, I think it's definitely beneficial. Now for somebody who is having health challenges and say they already have high blood pressure or high cholesterol, I would caution doing a higher amount of fat. Coconut oil has benefits to it, but it also is it still has that saturation of fat to it. And when you have a lot of saturated fats, it can reduce the oxygen potential of cells. So when you speak to like a cancer doctor, who we've had on various shows, he's a proponent when you have a lot of health challenges, particularly cancer. His advice is to do as little amount of oil as possible for that reason, because it can reduce oxygen in the body. So for somebody who's healthy, though, and is seeing benefits, I don't see a problem with it. I just wouldn't go hog wild. For somebody who already has a lot of health challenges, I would just be mindful of how much you're consuming.
And then focus on those foods like avocados in their whole raw form, our nuts, our seeds, and those things that give us those good fats as well, because it's all about that balance of, Well,
and that's coupled with fiber. So when you eat the fat in its raw form of avocado and nuts, you're getting all the polyphenols and the fiber and everything encapsulated together, as you would find it. Even the coconut oil, sold as raw, quote unquote, in the big tubs, it's still processed down to fit in that tub. You're not getting it directly from the coconut.
And they
itself.
do sell coconut butter, which is like the oil, but with all the fiber.
Yes.
And so that is a fantastic one as well. And they even have flavored versions of those. So if you don't like the flavor of that, they have some organic vanilla flavored ones, which they use a natural vanilla bean and some natural sweetener like stevia, I believe, and wonderful treat for kids, good fats. And so that's one that you can always throw in as well if you're out there, just trying to figure this out. And that's a great one.
Excellent. Well, a couple of questions along the line of Torah, what we were talking about. I wanted to get your take on with regard to the calendar, and if you have looked into examine that issue at all.
Yeah, running a conference, this issue is probably one of the biggest things, because we've got everybody who's doing either a lunar calendar or they're doing, a Friday to Saturday Shabbat, or they're doing a sunrise to sundown Shabbat. So you've got this whole calendar issue, right? We've got people that stick only to the scriptures, and then we've got people who, use Enoch as the primary aspect for the calendar. So when we've looked into the calendar, we've come back with one thing, and it's a vitally important topic, and I think he's calling us and everybody to get on his timing. But I think this, in my opinion, with all the division that I've seen this topic cause amongst so many people, and causes people not to fellowship together, because that's the worst thing that it can do. If it helps us, get into the Word and allow iron to sharpen iron and come together and learn together and reason together like the Scriptures teach, then fantastic. I think that is amazing. But what we have seen is it causes people to say, you're a heretic, you're this, you're that, and everybody starts splitting over this issue. And and the one thing that I keep thinking when we have all the prophetic aspects of when the Lord will return, and it says, no man will know the day or the hour, not me, but the Father only, right? So we get these passages, and I believe this is very similar to this calendar issue, or directly speaking about this calendar issue, because we know that his movements work on this prophetic timeline, which are his feast. He came back, or he will come back on his feast. His feasts represent his death, burial, and resurrection. So he fulfilled all of those according to his timeline, which is his timeline that was created in creation. How amazing is that? And so this calendar, which is so vital and so important, we don't make necessarily a stance, but this is something that we have, I've looked into probably a little bit more than Liz, but we try not to make this a dividing topic. And we, especially running a conference, with last year 600 people and so many different ideas and so many different realms. But I think that is the biggest thing. So if you're out there, studying this calendar, and don't allow it, when you get convinced of something, don't allow it to cause division with your brethren in whatever calendar they're in, because we still have brothers and sisters in the Gregorian calendar, and they think that's all fine and dandy and follow those things, and yet he's still calling them out of that, and he's going to call them out of that on his time,
right.
Not our time.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really with any issue, that we shouldn't let it divide us like that. And that we should be able to be, to come together in fellowship and discuss and talk and share and communicate about whatever it is that, may be a source of contention. But certainly in the community, that happens less and less, it seems like, with the more and more truth that keeps coming to light, whatever revelations are being brought forth, that for whatever reason, people choose to split over whatever.
Well, we're seeing splitting happen on every topic,
right.
And it's debating things, discussing things, is so is a good thing.
I think so.
The division that we're seeing out there because somebody says, well, I don't agree with that. This whole thing about, what we believe about biblical cosmology.
Right.
I'll share really quickly. There's a documentary that just came out, and it's called Faith on the Edge. And, we did a rebuttal show over on our new network called Take on the World TV. And we just did a little roundtable discussion where we watched the film and then we discussed the film. Uh-huh. Well, that ultimately led into me having not only a personal discussion with one of the creators of the film, but having a friendship with him. And we now truly have a good friendship, and we vastly disagree on, what they put forth, what we said as a rebuttal. And it's a refreshing relationship, because even we don't have to agree on these things. We can come together on our commonality of who our Messiah is and all the things that he's done. And that we truly believe that that's going to open up some doorways for us to be heard. If we're out there debating biblical cosmology, well, we haven't even entered the arena. They're not listening to us because they can't hear us. Right. We're in a debate where they think we're saying the sky is plaid, so we're automatically have no credibility in their eyes. But the minute that we can walk with them as brothers and spend time with them, understand, he asked me questions, I think you believe this, and here's why. And then I get to ask the same question. And at the end of the conversation, after, 2 hours, multiple times discussing, we're in a really good place. We'll be, hopefully be doing some shows together and just learning from each other and hearing each other when they speak. Yeah. And being able to share what we believe with passion, but not division.
Right.
And I think that's going to be important for this next step of us who believe in biblical cosmology. That's going to be the next thing that's going to lead. And we're going to, my goal is in this relationship is to create this like a rapture debate, whether you're a post, a pre, a mid.
Right. Yeah, fully.
Right. And we can walk into that discussion already not having no respect for each other. We have respect for each other. We see that it's scriptural. But if we can walk in with a other brother who believes in the Word of God, and then we can have a discussion with them, just like how you did with Dr. Pigeon. Right. If we can continue growing in this realm, this is where we're going to get to. They're going to hear not only our hearts, but they're going to see His words. They're going to see the truth of what we're trying to say, and we can't convince them. The Scripture can share with him what we see as the truth.
Right, and I think it's a beautiful thing for people to be able to come together and honor each other, and out of being family in Christ to share love and discussion, even if we don't agree or if we have opposing views on an issue, but to be able to just come together in a forum where we share and discuss and actually lay down what it is that we believe and go chapter by chapter, verse by verse through it, and allow, people to decide for themselves. But just even doing that is an example to the body, I believe, of how we should behave and how we should act, rather than attacking and creating hit pieces and things of that nature.
We're right. First and second greatest commandment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the thing, all of us, who claim to walk in His commands, do we pass the greatest of those commandments? Do we love our neighbor as ourselves? Right. Do we wear our tzitzits? Absolutely. Do we keep the feast? Do we make sure we don't do any work on Sabbath? Absolutely. Would we ever eat pork? No way. Are we loving our neighbor as ourselves? Here's a really good gut punch thing that I was thinking about during the Feast of Unleavened Bread recently, and I had this thought is, we talk and we know that the Feast of Unleavened Bread is all about sin. It is a representation of the removal of sin from our lives. And yet, when we look at it, we go, are we focused on purging leaven from our kitchen and our diets more than are we focusing on purging sin from our life? Are we going into prayer closets or prayer time every single day of unleavened bread focused on removing the sin from our life? Or are we focused on, does this contain baking soda? Now, look, I'm not saying the physical actions aren't good to do, because those physical actions teach us the spiritual. But is that the truth? That's how we knew if we actually kept unleavened bread. Did we focus on our prayer to remove leaven from our lives? That's how we know if we kept it. When I believe when Paul was telling those newly converted Gentiles who became grafted in to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread, most Christians don't even know that, Paul was teaching about sin and then telling them to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because that's what it's all about. And that's why we should be keeping it, not only because it fits beautifully in this perfect timeline of the death, burial, and the resurrection.
Yes.
But this is how we know. This is a gut punch. We need, this is for all of us. This is for myself. This is for Liz.
Absolutely.
Did we keep it, or did we just focus on eating unleavened bread, and removing and throwing out all the leaven from our freezer and our kitchen, and focused on this? Do we focus on those? What was our focus? And it comes back to that spiritual nature of the law all over again.
Exactly. I was just going to mention that. Yes, I fully agree. And we need to look at the deeper aspects of the feast, and even the coming of Christ and rectifying the fall, and that we are in a fallen state of being, and all of those things are things that we should reflect on as we celebrate and as we recognize the deeper, more profound aspects of why it is that we celebrate, observe, and honor the commandments and the feasts in that particular manner. Laura, let me give you a chance to comment here, and then let's talk about the conference that you have coming up.
Well, I just want to agree with Chris and Liz about just keeping first in mind to love our neighbor, because we're all being affected by this right now. And right now is the time we should be actually putting on the armor of Yah to stand against the enemy. And our neighbor is not our enemy. It's our brethren, our brothers and sisters in Christ. The hand does not say to the foot, I'm more important than you, and I know more than you. We're all members of the same body. And I love seeing my brothers and sisters working together, like as a team, because our enemy, the adversary, is formidable, and he's out to destroy us. And, our Father in heaven wants us to love each other, and that's why he named it the second greatest commandment.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, and we see that the enemy does work through the controlled opposition to divide and to conquer, and that he's able to do so, and that when we can come together and empower and encourage each other, that we in that manner exalt the kingdom as well, and that we display an example what Christ example to us in being a foot washer unto each other and to humanity, to be in service of one another and to share and love each other in that manner. And so I think that's really the root of the word and the law, in my opinion, as was told to us by Christ as well. But let me give you both, Chris and Liz, a chance to comment on that, and then if you would, let's transition into the conference that you've got coming up, some of the topics and speakers, and all of that, because I'm sure a lot of what we talked about this evening will be covered in presentation there.
Yeah, that's a great segue. So to talk a little bit about what you said, one thing that we feel so passionate about, when we look at whatever we call it, Torah observance, Torah pursuant. Here's the crutch of the whole matter, and it's not in anything that he's told us to do. The crutch is what we've done to it. And there was a show on Skywatch TV where they had Timothy Alberino on as a guest, and he was talking about the people in Torah observance, going back to the Old Testament ways, as reductionist. Now, in the way that he said it, I didn't agree with, but I got to thinking that is exactly what the vast majority, including me, what we've all done. We've reduced his commandments to meaning a handful of things. What I mean by that is when we say, does this person keep Torah? Do we walk in his Torah? Do we keep his Torah? All we are meaning nowadays is, do we keep the feast? Do we wear tzitzits? Do we keep the Sabbath? Do we eat biblically clean? That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the weightier matters of the law. We're not talking about the greatest commandments of the law. We're not talking about even aspects of the 10 Commandments. Don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. Nobody's asking that. We're only focused on that. And by default, we've done just what he said in that episode, is we've become reductionist. His Torah encompasses all these things. They are a beautiful picture of all of his instructions. And so, our brothers and sisters that aren't walking in these handful of things that are new to them, they don't understand them yet. We say that they're not Torah observant, but yet they keep the vast majority of his laws. They want to truly obey him. They have bad theology in some regards of Paul and some of those things we may say, but they still desire to love him and seek his ways and have godly marriages and be good parents and, love their neighbor as themselves, And so as getting to think about this past year, I thought about maybe that old grandma who is at churches. If we all grew up in a church, if you're out there and you grew up in a Baptist church or just any old home style church, you knew there was that one lady in the church, and you probably all had it, who was the first to greet you when you walked in the door, ask you if they could pray for you, always the one taking the prayer request, always the one helping with food, always the one doing all these things, maybe not the most biblically theological, but just had a heart to love and serve. And so as I got to thinking about that, that is the heart of Christ that person had. Do they know the fullness of it? Did that person understand the feast? No. Did they still think that Sunday was the Sabbath? Yeah. But they loved and they served. And so that got me thinking, for Take on the World 19, this is our third year doing our conference. And I think this year was the year to put the cart, stop putting the cart before the horse. Meaning, his mechanisms of loving him, is it taking away from who he is? Taking away that he is God, that he is these things, that he is a real person. He is a real God. And we've taken that away and we've replaced it with just a handful of things. And that's how we respond and how we treat people. And so we wanted to get back to that premise. And so, Take on the World 19, every single topic that we talk about, whether it's biblical cosmology, we talk about satanic ritual abuse, we talk about his feast days, and if you don't understand the feast days, these are the most vital parts of your faith if you are a believer in him. And I don't mean just the keeping of them, but they are a revelation of his death, burial, resurrection that were created in creation, and they are our blessed hope that he's coming back for us. And that is so vital and so important. So, but when we share these feasts, we need to share them as he is the focus of them. And all his commandments, why we do what we do, why we keep his commandments, why we eat biblically clean, why do we do this? If we can point and reflect back to Christ, we can't lose, because that is what they're all about. So Take on the World 19 is a biblical conference for the whole entire family. We call it a retreat. It is not only for adults, but we have a full kids program starting at the age of 4 and up, and a full teen program where they're going to not only get biblical lessons from some really amazing teachers. Liz will talk a little bit about that. But we've got so many fun activities. So it's not only something that they're going to remember and in regards of their walk and their faith, but it's going to be cemented by friendships that they're going to make. And we've already seen that. We have kids who have come who have created pen pals, and families who have come together and keep feasts together and do Bible studies on the phone together and pray for each other. Those are the things that it's about. So Take on the World 19. It's in beautiful Vermilion, Ohio. And I say Ohio because right now it's not so beautiful. It's going to get there.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. It is right in the month of August 22nd through the 25th. And I'll let Liz share, who's going to be there and what it's all about. Yeah. And,
So it really is a retreat-like conference. It starts off, we're kicking it off with a Super Thursday. It'll be a day full of activities, both for adults and kids. Normally the activities are for the kids, but we're going to open it up to everybody. There's zip lining. There's also a huge giant swing that swings you right over Lake Erie. Super fun. Everything of the conference is set at Beulah Beach Camp, which is a secluded Christian community camp. And it's gorgeous, right on Lake Erie. So it's just such a fun environment. We literally rent the whole entire place to ourselves. So for everybody who's wanting to just feel like you're off on your own island with your community of believers and friends, this is the feel that it has. And so Thursday we'll have all the activities throughout the day, and then we have a huge worship concert at night. We have different worship artists coming in. George Moss and Becca Shea is going to end the night. She has just some phenomenal music to share with us. And then from Friday through Sunday, we have literally 30, right? We're right at 30 speakers. And those speakers include Rob Skiba, Nate Wolf, who's known as Fired for Truth. He came to our conference last year.
He's no stranger to Zen Garcia.
Right. Yep, came to the conference last year as a pastor of a church and got fired 2 weeks later for coming to the conference.
We always say he got fired for coming, and we hired him to come speak.
So. Right. So he's going to be a speaker now.
That's just so you know.
At Take on the World 19. Tom Dunn, Nathan Reynolds, Michael Mize, which is an artist, Dr. Stephen Pidgeon, Robbie Davidson, John Pounders, Chad Schaefer, Zach Struherick, Doug Krieger, Rick Hummer, Torah Town. Oh my goodness, there's like so many to even name off in this short amount of time.
There's so many speakers. So many different topics. We always say there's going to be 30 plus speakers, 3 stages, over 70 sessions, and whatever topic you're interested in, whether it's prophecy, ritual abuse, deliverance, biblical cosmology, family, presentations. We have a marriage documentary. That's going to be shown at there. Homeschooling. So we've got everything covered. We're going to biblical health. So it's going to be something for everybody. And if you don't want to listen to any of those, you can go take a canoe ride. You can do any of those types of things right on the property. We have an amazing vendor section, and where Sacred Word Publishing is going to be there. Your son Justin and his wife Joy, they're going to be having your books. So anybody's going to be able to get those at the conference. Yeah. We have from the 30 speakers, we're going to have, probably 35 plus vendors all together. And
so we can't wait.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. We have on-site lodging, on-site dining. So we really try to make it very easy, very simple for you the whole time. You could pack your food, you can tent, you can bring an RV. It's very conducive for any type of lodging you want.
Real quick.
Yep, the website is takeontheworld.com. COVID19.com. You can also find us on Facebook as Take on the World Conferences.
All right, excellent. Well, hey, thanks both of you for coming on and sharing your incredible and in-depth knowledge. And I know myself and Laurel will both be getting the digestive health and, even the CoreHealth products that you have. Give that website out one more time.
CoreHealthProducts.com.
All right. God bless everyone. Thank you for joining in and listening in. We appreciate all of you. Be blessed. I hope you enjoyed the show. Until next week. Good night, all. Shalom.
Thanks, Chris and Liz. Thanks, Zen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you still on, Laurel?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Are we still on air, Zen? Or he's not even on. Okay.
He's off. So does that mean that it's,
Let me ask, because I know he wanted to order.
Yeah, so what we do for a lot of our friends and family, we carry stock at our house and, to all of our local friends and family.